Hi everyone, you are listening to Ellen Jaffe Jones, the veg coach and the broccoli rep, because who else is, as I like to say. And you are listening to what I call a simulcast. I used to be in television news for 18 years, and boy, they just couldn't even imagine what we are doing now with social media. So I am recording this show on two platforms. First, for the radio show that I do every Saturday morning out of the Tampa, Sun City area. And that show is titled appropriately so, Journey to Health and Learning. And then I'm also doing this as a recording for my YouTube channel because everybody has to have a YouTube channel, right? And I'm graciously being funded to do the radio show by the Silverback Peace Group, and they have asked me to do a number of shows up through the end of this month, I do believe, and basically just promoting what it's like to eat healthfully on a vegan diet. And I also do a YouTube channel called Vegan News You Can Use, and after the funding for the radio show ends, I hope you will join me there. And I post all kinds of vegan stories and current events that have the word vegan in them, and we certainly have a ton of those today. So the big news that broke yesterday, and it was all over the media, and I just about fell off my chair when I saw this one go by. And we'll just go to the NBC news site. It was on all the network newscasts, and I'll just read it to you. The Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus is stamping out its famous elephant acts. Feld Entertainment, the company that owns the circus, said Thursday it will phase out the 13 elephants from its traveling circus performances. By 2008, the popular pachyderms will be relocated to a conservation center in Central Florida, where they will join the rest of the Ringling Brothers herd of more than 40 elephants. It will take months to renovate the facility and make more room for the animals, a spokesman told NBC. The end of the circus's century-old tradition also comes after years of animal rights group putting pressure on the show. This is the most significant change we have made since we founded the Ringling Brothers Center for Elephant Conservation in 1995, Feld Entertainment CEO Kenneth Feld said in a statement, adding that the focus will be saving the Asian elephant, which is listed as endangered by wildlife conservation groups. Okay, so we'll close the door and see if we can let Snazzy Dog have his way with his own broadcasting department. All right, Ringling Brothers Center is home to a breeding program that has seen 26 elephant births, the company said. Feld owns the largest herd of Asian elephants in North America, according to the Associated Press, which originally reported news of the decision. So I can't begin to tell you how significant this is. It really is truly amazing. Now, I won't get into the whole history of the dispute, shall we call it, between all of the animal rights groups, but the very first video I ever saw, roughly in the mid-1980s in St. Louis, was one of elephant trainers just using all kinds of abusive tactics to train elephants out of the wild, who should have never been taken out of the wild in the first place, and put into a very confined and restricted arrangement. Now, in St. Louis, we had a free zoo. I don't live there anymore, so I assume it's still free, but I remember as a kid going to all of the elephant shows and other wild animal shows, and my perspective on this has really changed because I've seen videos in particular of how elephants just go AWOL. Their intelligence is so much more than we could have even ever imagined, and I think thanks to the programs that are on Nature and PBS, there are lots of programs now that kind of bring it in your face about how elephants grieve when they lose a member of their family, or how they nurture the young, much the way many mammals like ourselves do. And so it's more than just animal rights groups. I think it's just the kids in particular who are raised on social media and can see all of these videos up close and personal, where, like many vegans, people who don't eat any animals or use or consume any animals, have this connection that my generation, which is a little bit older, we never had that connection with our food 3 times a day. The way these videos now that are so in your face and you see all this abuse, um, it just makes it impossible to stick your head in the sand anymore and pretend that you don't see. So kudos to PETA and other animal rights groups that have really brought this front and center. And I remember when I saw my first video of the elephants in particular stampeding, and they had, you know, some kid on, one of the elephants had a kid on its back in one of these chairs, and it was just so eye-opening to see that, well, maybe we shouldn't be confining wild animals for human entertainment. And it's so easy now to just turn on your PBS channel and watch a nature show and see these animals in their natural environment. And that's really how we should be raising our children, not to go look at these poor wild animals in concrete cages. Or if they're lucky, a little bit more of a natural preservation. I mean, we shouldn't be taking them out of their environment anyway. And the idea that there's a whole funding for doing this, and that people just don't even consider the idea when they go to a zoo or any place where an animal is confined, that is not a good thing. Interestingly enough, I just found out about an organization. Another organization that I was involved with was planning a field trip to a cat rescue center in the Sarasota-Bradenton area where I live, and I was all excited about it when I was giving a talk up in the Tampa area to the Florida Voices for Animals annual fundraising event. And as it turns out, one of their speakers, in addition to me, was somebody who was heading up another cat sanctuary in the Tampa area, and they said, you know, that's really not a rescue center, it's more of a circus center. And sure enough, when the organization, I did not go on the tour, but when they posted in the newsletter the pictures they took, it looked exactly like a circus. All these animals in really confined cages, and of course there's all this, you know, the people who bought into it, of course they paid their $18 for a tour, and you know, they said, oh, the animals were so well cared for, but they're not if they're in cages, and especially small cages. I mean, use your brain, folks. Like, it's just kind of support places that are doing the right things by animals. And truly, the right thing is just to let them be in their own natural habitat and to try and preserve what few habitats are still in existence around this globe, to try and keep animals together. And I just thought this was really such a significant story. Some of you may know that last year I was voted PETA's sexiest vegan over 50, and you know, I have taken quite a bit of heat about that PETA is this awful organization, you know, for reasons that I just won't even go into because they're so unfounded and based in not a whole lot of truth. And there's actually a new movie out now by the director of Food Inc., and I can't remember the name of it, but if you Google that movie and his name, you'll see the name and maybe a link, hopefully, to the new movie. I don't know where exactly it's playing or the specifics of it, but it details this group called Center for Consumer Freedom, and Rick Berman, and 60 Minutes in 2020, and who knows how many other shows since then have done stories on this guy who has started this organization that is funded by meat, dairy, and they've even taken on Mothers Against Drunk Driving, and the fast food industry gives them a lot of money to basically debunk people like Dr. Neil Barnard, who is president of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and PETA, and you know, they start these bogus websites, and one of them is, I think, called PETA Kills or something like that, and it's just so sad and so bogus, and it's about trying to get vegans to conquer and divide and really attack themselves, because they feel like, I guess, if vegans kill each other, then that's, you know, more for the meat and dairy industry, and that's really how it works. And we have to ask ourselves, are we better off with or without these organizations? And PETA, by doing all this work and trying to get Ringling to back off, and Ringling in particular to back off the confinement of wild animals for circus purposes, is just such a huge victory. And there have been lawsuits over the years that animal rights groups have filed and lost, and you can just Google that whole thing, and it's been really sad as some of these, you know, struggling nonprofits. And that's why I entered the whole PETA's Sexiest Vegan Over 50 contest, because how else can organizations like that raise the kind of money it takes to take on organizations like Center for Consumer Freedom? What a misnomer. You know, I used to be a consumer reporter, and when I first found out about this guy and all the bogus websites that he started to try and get vegans to attack each other, and that is what's happened. That is what's happened, and it's so sad to me. It's just so sad, because people like Ingrid Newkirk, who, you know, I don't know her personally, but she did some interviews yesterday that were really wonderful to see, but she's been working on this and so many other issues. If you look at PETA's website, they are just doing all kinds of great things, and thank goodness somebody is. And again, as a television reporter, every time I saw that PETA or some other organization, animal rights group, tried to get media coverage in St. Louis, where I worked at both the ABC and the CBS affiliate for the better part of 13 years, and then in Miami before that, in Des Moines, my first TV job. What was I thinking? You got to go to a small market to pay your dues and get started, and it definitely worked. But anywho, with television in particular, they just don't want to cover stories like that unless there's something visually outrageous. So what would PETA do, and what did they learn? They would go protest at the local fur company in the middle of January with gorgeous women wearing faux fur and not much else, maybe a bikini underneath, and that's what got media coverage. And so you may want to say, well, they shouldn't be doing all these campaigns that use sex as a way of getting exposure, if you'll forgive the pun. But really, that is, how else do you do it? How else do you do it if you don't have the money to hire somebody like Rick Berman and his incredibly well-funded organization, Center for Consumer Freedom? Now, you know, a lot of the groups didn't want to talk about him because they didn't want to give him publicity, but you know, the way social media is now, and everything is all right there for you to see in a Google search, you will see that there's even some stories out there that his own son disowned his father. So I think it's important to understand that these kinds of things, you can't believe, as your mama or daddy used to say, you can't believe everything you read or you see or what you see. So why should you believe me and what I'm saying? Because I'm not making money doing this. I do, as I always have. I've been a TV investigative and consumer reporter, and it's just about trying to improve the world and making it a better place. And there's no finer paycheck, really, because it's not ever about the money. It's about seeing children grow up in a world that is reduced in suffering, both with humans and beyond to other animals. And getting back to the whole ringling elephants, I am so glad they are out of there. The only thing, and Ingrid Newkirk, the president of PETA, yesterday made this point very strongly, that it shouldn't take until 2018 to move them over to Orlando or wherever the sanctuary is going to be. Now, really, how long does it take to put an elephant in a truck and get it over there? You know, I think with all the money that Ringling must have, they could make this happen a lot sooner than 3 years from now. So if you know anybody over there, and interestingly, they said that their headquarters was in Palmetto, which is practically in my backyard. I'm going to be doing a 5K race there tomorrow, so about 30 minutes from where I am. I always thought they were in the Sarasota area because there's a big bridge that connects the barrier islands to the city of Sarasota called the Ringling Bridge, which I refuse to use that name. I always call it the Sarasota Bridge. And there are just so many different connections in the Sarasota area to Ringling, including they have the Circus Museum over there, they have a Ringling Mansion, and all of Ringling made so much money. They have this huge art museum. Now, my daughter is a rather well-known artist in London, and so when she came to visit me many years ago, I took her to the Ringling Museum because she wanted to see it, and she knew about it from her studies, and it blew me away. I mean, this guy had so much money to buy all these different pieces of art. They just have it in, I don't even know how many acres down in the Sarasota area, right on the water, of course. So, the land is not cheap, even in the 18 or 1900s, whenever he acquired it. So it's, there's some significant money. Point is, they could use a little bit of that money, maybe just sell off one of the Rembrandts or whatever they've got down there, and take care of those elephants, like now, not 3 years from now. So, it's still a great victory for the animal rights groups, and hopefully zoos really will become a thing of the past, just because I think we are getting this level of consciousness that it's not about us, it's about them. And if we take care of them, then in an ideal world, maybe our issues and problems will be reduced as well. So that's my rant about PETA, and again, congratulations to them and all the animal rights groups that have worked on this for decades, literally decades, to try and get Ringling in particular to get rid of the elephants and return them to the wild and never take them in the first place. So very cool. All right, let's see what else is going on in the vegan headlines of the week. Okay, there are just so many now. It used to be just a few stories if you would do a Google search on vegan. But let's see. There are lots of vegan cheese stories, and I encourage you, if you have an addiction to cheese and you say, oh, I can't go vegan because, and vegan, by the way, means nothing with a mother or a face, no animal products whatsoever, no eggs, no cheese, no dairy. Because we are the only species that drinks milk from another species. We don't need it, and it creates lots of problems. Do your research there. And so there are lots of vegan cheese out there, vegan cheeses out there. And for those people, actually there's I'm just looking at headlines now. There's a new cookbook called But I Could Never Go Vegan, includes 125 recipes and egg-free pizzas and nachos, I guess, eggs and dairy-free and egg-free pizzas and nachos. So a lot of dairy in bread. Sometimes it's a hidden ingredient called called whey or casein. Casomorphin is a byproduct of dairy that actually keeps baby cows coming back for more, and if humans start drinking milk, we often pick up on that addictive enzyme as well. So it takes about 3 to 6 weeks to change your taste buds if you're trying to give up any particular food. Just keep that in mind. Some people can do it gradually, introducing or getting rid of a certain food, but other people need to just do it from day one and never look back. So, all right. Ooh, Vegan Happy Hour series begins at Whole Foods in downtown Miami. Speaking of which, a vegan happy hour. Oh, I love that concept. I have started doing, because I have a wonderful food donor, Fresh Market. They are giving me food once a week to do 2 or 3 recipes out of my cookbooks. I was doing actual physical cookbook classes free out of my house, and suffice it to say, without going into a lot of detail, I loved doing it, but it was a whole lot of work. And I would only reach like maybe 10 or 20 people at the most. So the technology is such now that I'm doing Google Hangouts. I'm probably going to morph to a webinar platform, but for right now I've set up my second cyber cooking class on Wednesdays, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you have a Google account, you should be able to find me, or just Google me, it'll probably show up. And if you missed the 9 p.m. Eastern cooking class, then afterwards it will be available on a replay on YouTube. So there are lots of ways. I'm going to be doing 2 recipes at a time and then doing a Q&A afterwards. And what's so cool, unlike my radio show, unfortunately we can't take call-ins, so that's one of the reasons I record the show in advance. So every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, I will be cooking for you, almost like smell-o-vision, and I encourage people to, pick up the recipes and we can actually cook together. So if you have questions about what to do or how to do it, I'm right there to help you out. And we'll be cooking a couple of recipes from my second book, Kitchen Divided. I'll be doing a chocolate raspberry slushy, and then we'll also be doing a curry out of Kitchen Divided. So you can find out more about that on just Google Ellen Jaffe Jones cooking classes, and I'm sure it'll show up either on YouTube or in the Google Hangout part of the Google app. So that is what we'll be doing, at least in the short term. I'm speaking at a number of Veg Fest coming up, including Tallahassee, and I'm doing the Health Fest in Marshall, Texas, which is pretty cool. Speakers from all over the country go to that. And I'm also going to be appearing at the Sun City. And if you're watching me, you're seeing me grab for different papers. I have all these different notes of where I'm going to be and details. But the Sun City Center Fun Fest, say that 10 times fast. So that is going to be March 21st from 9 to 2 p.m., 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I will not be speaking there, but I will be at the Silverback Peace Group table, where they will have all kinds of raffles and giveaways. And they're just an amazing organization that spends a lot of time and a bit of money trying to do outreach and just show people, like I try to do, how easy and cheap and wonderful you feel going vegan, because you're not murdering an animal and you're not asking anybody else to do that. And that's really the key to this, is we make all these reconnections with our food. You know, we go to a grocery store, we buy meat in a shrunk wrap package, and nobody thinks about how it ever got there. I remember when my kids were small, there was some discussion about taking the kids to go to the butcher department, the meat department in the back of the grocery store, and I got overruled. The other mothers thought, oh, it's going to be too traumatic for the kids to watch. You're darn tootin' it's going to be too traumatic, because when we make that connection, when we see how animals suffer to get on our plate 3 times a day, and you can now just see all that on YouTube, as I've mentioned, then it is really, the light goes off for a whole lot of people, at least to try and cut back a bit. So, Silverback Peace Group, Sun City Center Fun Fest, they'll have a table there, look for me, and this radio show will only continue up until that point. So, after that, I will, of course, be live as much as I can every week on YouTube to try and give you vegan news you can use. All right, speaking of which, let's go back to the other vegan news you can use. Titanic director to open a vegan school. Now, this story has been out there for a while. James Cameron and his wife have been vegan since 2012. I'm now clicking on the link. He's better known for directing films like Avatar and Titanic, but James Cameron and his wife just don't own a school. They're planning to make it a plant food only school. The Muse School in California, and I'm just reading from this now here, where are we? Newsoptozoo.com. The Muse School in California is a private school that caters for students from early childhood right through high school. The Camerons founded it in 2006, along with his wife Susie's sister Rebecca. By celebrating community and natural environments, we're promoting cross-cultural experiences, modeling leadership, and illustrating that learning and teaching are collaborative efforts. All right, so that's what the school's website says. Gorgeous picture of it. Set on 22 acres in the Malibu Canyon, the school has a strong sustainable living focus, complete with lots of play space, water features, outdoor classrooms, and organic fruit and vegetable plots that supply the foundation for our Seed to Table program. The next step in that phase is making the school vegan. In the fall of 2015, the school will be the only school we are aware of that is completely plant-based, Susie told The Hollywood Reporter. It's about raising kids who don't think it's strange or exotic or worthy of a pat on the back to be doing the right thing for the living biosphere. Bearing in mind that American schools serve lunch, menu items will reportedly include sloppy joes and quesadillas, but will exclude meat, cheese, and other animal products, according to Today.com. The Camerons have been vegan since 2012. Well, we don't care about the only part. It's awesome that they are. With Susie telling You can't really call yourself an environmentalist if you are still consuming animals. You just can't. Now, I wish they'd gotten into that a little bit more, but just check out all the research that's coming in, that cows in particular, but animal methane is the #1 contributor to our global meltdown. That's right, more so than giving up your car. If you give up animals, you are doing way more to reduce your carbon footprint, and that has been documented by the United Nations and a number of other studies. So that is the vegan news you can use as best I can give it to you, and I hope that you will be following all that we do from whatever standpoint and source of information that you choose to follow. And there are just so many great vegan doctors out there that have been singing from this same songbook for a number of years because they understand there's no money in broccoli. And my books, Eat Vegan on $4 a day. And, I wrote that because I really wanted to show that you can eat healthfully on a plant-based diet without having to go to a health food store, although I have spent a great big part of my life and income in health food stores. And that's really how I learned all about this, is just reading the books that were available. And there were plenty at the health food stores I looked at in 1983 when I almost died of a colon blockage, give or take. I had heard from doctors in my family, you better do something different with your life or you're going to end up like everybody else in your family. Mom and both sisters had breast cancer. They all had heart disease and diabetes. And these dots are so connected. The one sister who hadn't had cancer yet had routine, don't you love that word, herniated disc surgery and flatlined on the table from MRSA entering in through the IV, and is now paralyzed in a nursing home for the rest of her life. So all these dots are so connected, and I really believe one of the reasons she got MRSA, aside from a compromised immune system, which, by the way, when I mentioned that to my other sister, she just went ballistic and said, oh, no, that's not the reason she got it. Well, if you do the research, it would certainly suggest that that could have been one of the causes. But I also think that we have way too many antibiotics in our dairy supply. Why? Because as a former La Leche League leader, Breastfeeding Information and Support Group, I saw all the research about how often cows had to have, dairy cows had to have, in particular, antibiotics. Because why? Companies like Monsanto were and still are producing bovine growth hormones to make the mammary glands secrete 15% more milk. And as any breastfeeding mother will tell you, if you aren't milked frequently, you often get mastitis. And even if you are milking frequently, it creates problems. And so the farms, just to avoid problems, routinely gave dairy cows antibiotics. Now, there is movement afoot to try and put an end to that, and or at least reduce the amount of antibiotics. But I think that we're between what is discarded in our water supply and what is in cattle and dairy cows. We are getting, if we're eating meat, we are getting way more antibiotics than we have ever bargained for. And Candida, I mean, that's a whole nother story we could do, but that is the result of having too many antibiotics in our gut flora and destroying basically our digestive system. So the proliferation of probiotics on the shelves to try and deal with this, to create, kind of create the antithesis for the antibiotics, is just a testimony to how huge this problem is. And certainly the situation with my sister is just one small microcosm of, I know, what is going on out there. So eating foods in their natural state, eat as Mother Nature intended. What did our ancestors really do? Read more about that in my book, Paleo Vegan, which talks about how our ancestors really were eating. They weren't catching a wild boar 3 times a day and getting it on our plate. And then also my middle child, Kitchen Divided, for semi-vegan dishes for semi-vegan households. That is and was the story of my life with my husband, who wasn't vegan and had a heart attack, massive heart attack, the day before Halloween. And so we got a lot of issues to deal with, folks. And if we're going to save our children, we need to at least be taking some steps to eat healthier. All right, you can find me at vegcoach.com. I do coaching. I'm a certified running coach. I'm a certified personal trainer, an accomplished athlete. You can see all that on the website. And I am always happy to work with people in any way that I can to improve their health, whether it's free cooking classes, you want to hire me for $1,000 a meal, I will fly to wherever you are and cook you up a great meal or two, just to show you how easy it is to eat a vegan diet. All right, everybody, have a great week, and gotta run.